The icy night breeze swept across the terrace of Manhattan's most luxurious penthouse, but Logan Pierce didn't feel the cold. Only the cold sweat that trickled down his temple, an invisible river of dread that betrayed the facade of control he had perfected over decades. The city's shimmering lights, which normally soothed him with their hypnotic pulse, now felt like prying eyes, millions of them, watching his imminent ruin, each spark a silent judgment. He stood there, a sole billionaire, whose fortune could buy anything: influence, pleasure, silence, everything except peace in that agonizing moment. Before we begin, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next video. Now, back to the story. Enjoy. In his hands, a crumpled linen napkin, the tangible proof of a catastrophe unfolding in slow motion, a personal horror film. 4 words. Just 4. But they were relentless hammers, pounding against the golden walls of his empire, threatening to crumble it to dust, each blow echoing with the sound of shattering. The fine paper trembled in his fingers, not from the fabric's fragility, but from the uncontrollable tremor that coursed through every fiber of his being, an electric current of despair. The glass of scotch, still untouched on his futuristic glass table, seemed to mock him, promising a false comfort he knew wouldn't come. His gaze was fixed on the hurried, feminine, almost illegible handwriting, but the message was crystal clear in its brutality. A fatal blow, straight to the heart of everything he had built. Sheer panic choked him, a tight knot in his throat, cutting off the oxygen. How had he not seen it? How had he let this happen? His world, meticulously built on numbers, ruthless strategies, and a network of contacts that spanned continents, was on the edge of an abyss he himself, ironically, had dug with his own hands. It felt like falling, with no ground, no air. To understand the magnitude of that silent terror, to comprehend how Logan Pierce, the untouchable, the visionary behind Pierce Holdings, had reached this point of abyssal despair, one had to go back. Back to the origins of his quest, to the cynicism that drove him, and to the seed of doubt that led him to test the loyalty and ethics of his own reign. One had to unravel the journey that transformed him from a passive observer into an imminent victim. Logan Pierce's life, at 45, was a succession of empty grandeur, an endless parade of soulless luxury. From the polished floors of his minimalist penthouse with its panoramic view of Central Park, where the skyline stretched out like a carpet of light, to his beachfront mansion in Malibu, where the waves whispered secrets onto the sand. From the 150-foot yacht anchored in Saint-Tropez to the private jets that ferried him to global meetings as casually as a taxi, he was the epitome of financial success. His parties were legendary, his name synonymous with power and innovation. Yet behind the facade of a tech and hospitality billionaire lived a profoundly lonely man, imprisoned by a cynicism that deepened with each passing year, like slow-forming rust on precious metal. He had everything, or at least everything money could buy, which, paradoxically, meant he had nothing of genuine value. Friendships were carefully calculated transactions. Relationships were fleeting and superficial, like the foam of a wave that quickly vanishes. Loyalty was a currency, an implicit contract that could be broken at any moment. This was his fundamental belief, solidified by years of ruthless observation of human nature. He had built a global empire, Pierce Holdings, a conglomerate that included everything from innovative software shaping the digital future to a network of fine dining restaurants, like the famed Golden Fork in Chicago. But lately, a deeper, more insidious question had been gnawing at him. Was it all worth it? Did all that glitter, all that opulence, hide a silent rot at its core? He feared it did. It was this doubt, this search for a truth that money could neither buy nor conceal, that gave birth to his secret ritual. Every few weeks, Logan Pierce would disappear, not from the media that idolized him, nor from his associates, who were managed with an iron fist by his trusted advisor, Marcus Hale. He would disappear from himself. He'd leave behind the Armani suits, the luxury cars, and the invisible security detail. He'd put on ordinary clothes, worn-out jeans, a scuffed jacket that had seen better days, a baseball cap that made him unrecognizable on the bustling streets, and take on a new name, Luke. Under the guise of an ordinary man, a blue-collar worker, an unassuming tourist, Logan would dive into his own empire, like a spy in his own castle, with no one knowing the king was among them. He would frequent the lobbies of his hotels as an anonymous guest, sit in his cafes as just another customer, and, most often, dine in his restaurants, observing every detail with a surgeon's precision. He wasn't looking for flaws in the cuisine or the decor, though he noted them. He was searching for something more elusive, more profound: honesty. He wanted to see the soul of his business, without the filters his fortune imposed, without the forced smiles or servile deference. He wanted to know if his employees, from the award-winning chef commanding the kitchen to the waitress and clearing dirty tables on the late-night shift, acted with integrity, or if corruption was the real invisible glue holding it all together. His initial experiences in other Pierce Holdings establishments had only reinforced his inherent pessimism: managers who skimmed small amounts from the register, disappearing without a trace; servers who stole tips from their colleagues with the subtlety of a street magician; suppliers who offered generous incentives to secure exclusive contracts, ignoring product quality. The corporate world, he concluded, was a well-oiled machine of self-interest, where ethics was an empty word, a forgotten footnote. And he, Logan Pierce, sat atop this machine, an isolated king in a rotten kingdom he himself had helped build, cementing its foundations with the very gold that now stained his soul. Deep down, however, a small spark of hope still lingered, stubborn and almost imperceptible. The hope that, somewhere, someone would prove him wrong, that integrity still existed, untouched by the clutches of greed. Marcus Hale, his right-hand man, a man of sharp intellect and unshakable loyalty, who had been his confidant for over a decade, was the only one who knew about the ritual. "You're looking for a unicorn, Logan," Marcus had once said. With an ironic smile Logan knew well. A myth, a corporate legend that never existed. Logan just shrugged, his gaze distant. "Maybe I enjoy hunting the impossible, Marcus. Or maybe I just want to know how rotten the apple is before it falls and taints the whole barrel." The truth was, he wanted the unicorn to exist, desperately. Logan, as Luke, was preparing for his next hunt, the one that would lead him to the crumpled napkin and the edge of the precipice. The target was the Golden Fork, the flagship of his fine dining chain in Chicago, a jewel in the Pierce Holdings crown. He'd received reports, vague and inconclusive, about a slight dip in customer satisfaction, nothing serious enough to warrant a direct intervention from Logan Pierce, but enough to pique the curiosity of the disguised billionaire and prompt a visit. The Golden Fork was a cathedral of cuisine, a temple of sophistication and excess. Crystal chandeliers, imported from the Czech Republic, descended from the high ceiling, illuminating dark wood tables and velvet armchairs that invited luxurious comfort. The hum of elegant conversation, the gentle clinking of silver flatware, and the seductive aroma of gourmet dishes filled the air, creating a symphony for the senses. Logan, in his usual disguise, faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, and the old leather jacket that made him look like a tired tourist, felt the contrast immediately. The hostess, Anna, a blonde woman in her early 30s with a fixed smile rehearsed for the high-end clientele and cold eyes that scanned wallets before faces, sized him up with thinly veiled contempt. Her gaze drifted from his worn baseball cap to his scuffed sneakers and stopped there, making no attempt to hide the silent judgment Logan was used to receiving in his Luke persona. "Table for one?" she asked, her voice polished but with an inflection that suggested he was in the wrong place, trespassing in a sanctuary. "Yes, Luke," Logan replied, forcing a friendly smile that didn't reach his eyes. Anna consulted her clipboard, though her eyes had made a decision long before. She led him through the main dining room, bypassing the nicer tables, some empty, others with the best views. She stopped abruptly in a remote corner, almost hidden behind a massive pillar, with a prime view of the kitchen door and the frenetic, coordinated dance of the servers. The worst table in the house, without a doubt. Logan nodded, grateful for the strategic isolation, and sat down. It was perfect. From his observation post, he had a clear view of everything happening behind the scenes and on the floor. And what he saw, initially, only deepened his pessimism. He watched an older waitress, with graying hair and a forced laugh, forget to ring up an expensive dish on the restaurant's electronic system, accepting cash from the customer, and then, in a swift, almost imperceptible move, tuck a few bills into her own pocket before splitting the rest with a sweat-faced line cook. He saw another waiter, young and ambitious, trade sections with a colleague for a more lucrative spot, clearly for some kind of favor or an advance on tips. Small acts of venality, subtle enough to go unnoticed by a regular customer, but which Logan, with his eye trained to spot irregularities and ethical lapses, detected effortlessly. The pillars of his empire were built on sand. Then he saw him, Damien, the manager of the Golden Fork, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seemed to be sewn onto his skin. With slicked back hair and a charming smile, he flashed easily for the right customers. But Logan noticed the way Damien gestured to the servers with an almost imperceptible nod, a silent language of control. He noted how his eyes scanned the room, not to ensure service excellence, but to map out opportunities for manipulation. He saw him pull one of the waiters into a discreet corner, whispering something with a cold intensity, and then receive a small envelope in return, which disappeared into the inner pocket of his jacket. Small gestures that the bully, billionaire, Logan Pierce instantly translated as corruption, order manipulation, and favoring dishonest employees in exchange for compromised loyalty. Damien was a sophisticated predator, operating in the shadows of opulence, a parasite feeding off the wealth that surrounded him. Logan ordered a simple pasta dish and water, just to have an excuse to stay and watch, his appetite eroded by what he saw. He felt the weight of his cynicism crushing him again, like an old friend come to visit. The unicorn was, indeed, a myth, a fairy tale for fools who believed in the inherent goodness of humanity. About 20 minutes passed when a new waitress approached his table, bringing his pasta. She was different. There was something about her that set her apart from everyone else he'd observed. She didn't have Anna's fake smile, nor the sloppy posture or disinterested gaze of some of the others. Samantha had brown eyes that told stories of deep-seated exhaustion, of daily struggles, yet they shone with an unshakable dignity, a quiet strength that seemed to emanate from her core. Her dark brown hair, pulled back in a simple, practical ponytail, didn't hide the faint worry lines on her forehead. She was slender, her movements a bit rushed from the restaurant's frantic pace, but every gesture was efficient, thoughtful, and devoid of any resentment. "Good evening. Everything all right here?" she asked, her voice soft, but with a genuine sweetness that Logan hadn't expected, a stark contrast to the coldness of the others. She showed no hint of disdain for his simple clothes, or if she did, she masked it with a mastery the others lacked, an innate kindness that Logan registered. "Everything's great, thank you," Logan replied, almost surprised by his own voice, which sounded softer than usual. He watched as she leaned over to wipe a small sauce splatter from the table next to his, her eyes scanning the room for customers who might need something, always one step ahead, anticipating needs before they were spoken. He saw her waiting on a family with small children, patiently, laughing genuinely at their antics, even when a plate was accidentally knocked over. While other waiters rolled their eyes behind the customers' backs with an audible sigh of impatience, Samantha immediately knelt to help clean the mess, reassuring the parents with a warm smile. Later, he saw her being reprimanded by Damien, in a tense whisper near the service station. For some reason Logan couldn't quite decipher. Samantha's face went pale, and a slight tremor ran through her hands, a sign of her vulnerability. But she held her head high, her eyes locking with Damien's with a quiet courage that defied the manager's subtle, intimidating authority. There was no submission in her gaze, only a stubborn resilience. Logan noticed something deeper. In a brief moment of pause, while waiting for her section's food to come up from the kitchen, Samantha pulled a worn photograph from her wallet, its edges frayed with time. It was a child, a boy of perhaps 10, with a faint, almost ethereal smile. Her eyes softened, and a pang of pain crossed her face before she quickly put the photo away, as if afraid someone would see her most intimate vulnerability, her weak spot. There was a profound worry in her, something that went far beyond the daily stress and demands of a waitress. That photo, that look, told a story of struggle and sacrifice that he couldn't ignore. Logan, the cynical billionaire, who had convinced himself that honesty was an illusion, felt an unusual, almost unsettling curiosity. Samantha was not the same lump of clay molded by greed and superficiality he'd expected to find. There was a spark in her, a light in a dark corridor of his own empire, that made him want to look closer, to unravel her secrets. She was the anomaly, the dissonance in his symphony of disillusionment, the piece that didn't fit into his puzzle of corruption. He watched her for over an hour. She was the only one who seemed to work with an intrinsic integrity, a sense of purpose that transcended simply earning tips or blindly obeying Damien's orders. She didn't buckle under pressure. She maintained her composure, her dignity, even under the manager's scrutinizing gaze. To Logan, she was a fascinating enigma, a glimpse of something pure in a world he considered utterly impure. She was the unicorn he had been searching for, the image of that boy in the photo, Samantha's pained expression, the quiet courage he'd observed in her at the Golden Fork. It all flashed through Logan's mind like a camera's strobe as he stared at the crumpled napkin in his trembling hands. That vivid memory of Samantha mixed with the panic now gripping him, the two emotions merging into a chaotic whirlwind. Cold sweat ran down his spine, betraying his usual composure. The city lights glittered, mercilessly, each one a reminder of the world he was about to lose, or worse, that was about to crumble because of him. The night breeze no longer mattered. It couldn't penetrate the bubble of terror that enveloped him. 6 weeks after his first encounter with Samantha, 6 weeks of observation, of a search for honesty that had led him to a much darker discovery, a discovery that would change Logan Pierce forever, he was back where he started. Or not. He was at the epicenter of a catastrophe he had uncovered, but paradoxically, had not yet managed to stop. He caught the faint scent of metal and disinfectant, a smell that didn't belong on his luxurious terrace, but had infiltrated his memory, coming from some dark and forbidden place, a makeshift lab, a torture chamber for the truth. He saw the images in his mind, the truth that had been revealed gradually, day after day, through subtle clues, hidden documents, and a courage he hadn't expected to find in himself, nor in the simple waitress who had led him there. He took a deep breath, the air feeling dense and thin at the same time, as if his lungs refused to obey. Samantha's voice echoed in his mind, the urgency in every silent syllable she had conveyed so desperately, so bravely. And there it was. On the crumpled linen napkin, the proof, the warning, the 4 hastily written words that had the power to bring down not just his empire, but to cost countless lives, including that of the brave waitress and her sick brother, Nathan. Logan closed his eyes for an instant, the image of the boy's faint smile from the photo flashing through his mind. He knew there was no time. The 4 words on the linen napkin were, "The meat is tainted." The 4 words danced before Logan's eyes, seared into his mind. The meat is tainted. The napkin, once an innocuous piece of linen, now felt like an ancient scroll, bearing forbidden and deadly knowledge. The revelation hit him with the force of a punch to the gut, emptying his lungs of all air. The panic from moments before transformed into a cold fury, a burning hatred for the malevolence he had uncovered. His empire, his reputation, his legacy, all of it was at risk of annihilation. But far beyond that, lives were at stake, countless lives. The vision of the pawn waitress, Samantha, with her tired yet dignified eyes, and the image of the little boy, Nathan, in her photo, blazed in his mind, chasing away any remaining trace of cynicism. That unicorn wasn't just real. It was the embodiment of the most brutal truth he had ever faced. He, Logan Pierce, the Millionaire, who tested the ethics of others, now found himself at the center of a conspiracy that challenged his own morality. From observer to active participant, the transformation was abrupt and irreversible. He clenched the napkin in his hand, his fingertips marking the fabric. There was no time for self-pity or for contemplating the ruins of his cynicism. There was only an overwhelming urgency, a pressing need to act. His brain, a strategy and problem-solving machine rarely challenged by matters of life and death, kicked into gear. He didn't just need to expose Damien. He needed to dismantle the network behind him and, above all, protect Samantha and Nathan. The game had changed. From a test of honesty, it had become a race against time to save lives. Logan was still at the secluded table at the Golden Fork, masked as Luke, observing Samantha. He had seen her being berated by Damien, seen the tremor in her hands, and finally caught the glimpse of the boy's photo. Those details, which would have gone unnoticed by anyone else, were crucial pieces of a puzzle Logan was beginning to assemble. His search for honesty had found a face, a name, and a vulnerability that compelled him to move beyond his detached observer's stance. Samantha, for her part, felt the weight of the world on her slender shoulders. Every plate she carried, every smile she forced for the customers, was a battle won against the anxiety consuming her. Her personal story was a burden of pain and resilience, shaped by the illness of her younger brother, Nathan, who was only 10. Nathan suffered from a rare and severe kidney disease that required expensive and frequent treatments. The medical bills piled up like mountains, and her waitress salary barely covered the basics, let alone her brother's life-saving care. Samantha's dignity was her armor, but Nathan's anguish was her exploitable weakness. Damien, the manager, was a man with a nose for the desperation of others. He had discovered Nathan's situation through kitchen gossip and soon began his subtle blackmail. It started with small favors, changing the record of a few orders to skim minimal profits, overlooking the delivery of products that seemed compromise in exchange for kickbacks from suppliers. At first, Samantha resisted, her morals in shock, but Damien had an insidious way of applying pressure. "You want little Nathan to have the best treatment, don't you, Samantha?" He would whisper in a dark corner of the kitchen, his cold eyes gauging her reaction. "Debts can be a problem, and who knows what happens to a waitress who doesn't cooperate. You'd lose your job, and then how would you pay for your brother's medicine?" The threat was veiled but brutally effective. Samantha felt Damien's claws tightening, forcing her to compromise her integrity piece by piece. He pressured her to ignore certain boxes of meat that arrived at the restaurant, to not report the dubious origin of some vegetables. Every act, no matter how small, ate away at her soul. But Nathan was the priority. His life depended on her ability to endure the unbearable. She had reached her limit, feeling complicit in something she didn't fully understand, but that smelled of danger. That night, while serving the mysterious man, Luke, Samantha felt a glimmer of hope. There was something about him, a quiet watchfulness, a gaze that seemed to see beyond her simple clothes and her tired facade. He saw her, and she, in her desperation, began to hatch a risky plan. Her eyes met Luke's for a brief instant as she wiped the table next to his, and a wild thought sprouted in her mind. He was different. He seemed like a good man. Maybe, just maybe, he could be her only chance. In the following days, Logan returned to the Golden Fork repeatedly, always as Luke. He made a point to always sit in Samantha's section. He watched her, analyzing every interaction, every gesture. He noticed the way she treated every customer, regardless of their appearance or the size of their bill. She showed the same courtesy and genuine attention to a young couple on a tight budget as she did to a wealthy businessman. This was the honesty he was looking for, not in money, but in character. On one of his visits, Logan decided to push it to the limit. He needed unquestionable proof of her integrity. "Samantha," he called, as she approached his table to ask if he needed anything else. "I'd like a special order, the chef's degustation menu, paired with a bottle of the 2005 Chateau Margaux." The order was extravagant for a man in jeans and a scuffed jacket. The tasting menu was the most expensive in the house, and the wine was one of the priciest bottles in the cellar, costing more than her weekly salary. Samantha didn't blink. Her eyes widened slightly, but she regained her composure in an instant. "Excellent choice, sir," she replied, her voice steady and professional, without a hint of judgment or mockery. She took the order with the same seriousness she would have for a hamburger. It was at that moment that Damien, with his menacing omnipresence, approached the table. "Luke, what a surprise to see you with such an ambitious order," he said, a cynical smirk on his lips, sizing Logan up and down. Then he turned to Samantha, his tone shifting to a cutting coldness. "Samantha, perhaps this customer should be transferred to another waiter, someone with more experience to handle such specific requests." It was a clear order for her to give up the potentially large tip and a jab at her capabilities. Samantha pressed her lips together but held his gaze. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Damien. I can handle the customer's order," she replied, her voice laced with a quiet courage that surprised Logan himself. She wasn't intimidated. She didn't look for a shortcut. She maintained her professional integrity and her dignity. Damien shot her a warning glance but backed down, realizing that for some reason, this waitress one was being stubborn. Logan watched the interaction and smiled inwardly. The unicorn not only existed, but it was stubborn and proud. It was the proof he needed. Samantha was the right person. The night reached its boiling point. The Golden Fork was packed, the buzz of voices and clinking silverware nearly drowning out the ambient music. Logan had already finished his dinner, which, as expected, was served with impeccable professionalism by Samantha. He had paid the bill, including a generous tip he hoped would go to her. He watched Samantha with a restrained intensity, waiting. He knew she was looking for an opportunity too. Samantha felt Damien's eyes on her like a laser beam. In recent days, the manager's demands had escalated. He didn't just want her to turn a blind eye to certain deliveries. He now wanted her to manipulate inventory records to ensure that specific boxes of beef from a supplier newly acquired by Damien were prioritized and quickly distributed among the other Pierce Holdings restaurants in Chicago before the company audit detected anything. He knew she had access to the system. The fear of losing her job and leaving Nathan helpless was a knot in her stomach. But the voice of her conscience screamed louder. That meat. There was something very wrong with that meat. She had seen the tampered seals, the strange smell of some packages. She approached Logan's table with a tray, pretending to be clearing the last remnants of his meal. Her eyes met his for a fraction of a second. There was a desperate determination in her gaze, and Logan felt his heart race. She leaned in slightly, the movement subtly covered by the tray. "Sir, I hope you enjoyed your dinner," she whispered, her voice nearly inaudible over the restaurant's din. Her fingers, trembling slightly, slid a folded piece of paper under Logan's empty plate. "I've left you a little tip about the city." Logan nodded with a neutral smile, maintaining his outward calm. "Thank you, Samantha. I'm sure it will be useful." He watched her walk away, his heart pounding in his chest. The risk she had just taken was immense. As soon as she was out of range, Logan retrieved the piece of paper. It wasn't a linen napkin, but a small note from the restaurant's order pad, which he knew was used for special requests. He discreetly unfolded it under the table. The hurried, almost illegible handwriting was hers, and the 4 words, now in a different context, resonated with terrifying clarity. "The meat is tainted." Logan felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't a suspicion. It was a certainty. A confession. A cry for help. His puzzle was complete, but the picture was darker than he could have ever imagined. Logan's objective had indeed shifted, from an internal moral test to a high-stakes mission to save lives and expose a criminal network that now stretched far beyond the walls of a single restaurant. Back in his Chicago hotel suite, the disguise of Luke was shed. Logan Pierce emerged, his mind sharp and determined. He was no longer just the cynical, billionaire. He was a man with a purpose, a protector, a vigilante. His first call was to Marcus Hale. Marcus answered on the second ring, his voice deep and professional. "Logan? To what do I owe the honor of such a late call?" "Marcus, get the jet ready. For Chicago. Now. And call Claire Donovan. Have her join us. It's a security emergency. A very serious one." Logan's tone left no room for questions. Marcus, though surprised, knew Logan well enough to recognize when something was grave. "Claire Donovan. She's on a project in Switzerland. I'll have to pull her out." "Pull her. Tell her it's a matter of life and death, because it is." Logan explained to Marcus, in concise and urgent terms, what he had discovered. The honesty hunt had unearthed something rotten at the heart of Pierce Holdings. "Damien isn't just stealing, Marcus. He's poisoning people." Marcus was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. "Poisoning? Logan, that's a whole different level. Catastrophic consequences." "I know. And one of our waitresses, Samantha, is the one who gave me the tip. She's being blackmailed by Damien. She has a sick brother." "Understood. Claire will be en route, so will I. We'll be in Chicago in a few hours." Claire Donovan, a former CIA agent specializing in cybersecurity and tactical infiltration, was an obvious choice. Her mind was as sharp as Logan's, but her focus was the shadowy world of intelligence and covert operations. She was assertive, brilliant, and fearless, the perfect person to lead the tactical actions to come. With his team assembling, Logan felt a renewed determination. Time was of the essence. In less than 12 hours, Marcus and Claire were in Logan's Chicago suite. The living room of the penthouse had been transformed into a makeshift command center. Maps of the Golden Fork and other Pierce Holdings restaurants were spread across the coffee table. Laptops displayed data and reports. "The situation is clear," Claire said, her voice calm and emotionless, a contrast to the gravity of her words. "Damien is using the Golden Fork as a hub to distribute tainted meat, likely from a supplier he controls, or one he's bribed. The wood waitresses, aren't you? Note is our inciting incident. We need hard evidence, the origin of the meat, the nature of the contamination, and the extent of the network." Marcus was already digging into Damien. His financial records are a snake's nest. Shell companies, transfers to offshore accounts. He has partnerships with shady suppliers not approved by our supply chain. This confirms your suspicions, Logan. The obstacles were numerous. Damien was smart and cautious. The distribution network was complex, reaching multiple Pierce Holdings restaurants, increasing the risk of a widespread outbreak. Time was critical, as every day the meat was in circulation meant more people were in danger. And above all, the safety of Samantha and Nathan was a constant concern. Logan had already arranged for discreet protection for Samantha's family through Claire's contacts. But it wasn't enough. Damien's blackmail could force her into a desperate move. Claire's team began a covert investigation. Undercover agents were sent to the other Pierce Holdings restaurants, collecting meat samples and looking for irregularities in stock records. Marcus, through his financial connections, started to unravel Damien's web of shell companies and dubious transactions, linking him to a group of Logan's former business partners who had been ousted from Pierce Holdings years earlier for unethical practices. The conspiracy was larger, more personal, and more dangerous than Logan had imagined. It wasn't just about greed, it was about revenge. The pressure mounted. The investigation was moving forward, but Damien was on the move too. One night, Samantha received a call. It was Damien. His voice was low and cold, but laced with a threat that chilled the waitress's blood. "Samantha, it seems someone is asking questions about our suppliers. You don't have anything to do with that, do you? It would be a shame if something happened to your brother's treatment, or to him." Samantha felt her heart stop. What did Damien know? Was he suspicious of her? Did he know about Luke? She forced a calm voice. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Damien. I just do my job." "Oh, of course you do," Damien sneered. And to prove your loyalty, I need you to do an extra job. I have a special shipment arriving tomorrow morning. I need you to expedite its distribution. Make sure the meat goes directly to our main warehouse, and from there to all the restaurants, without going through the usual quality control. The inspection papers have already been taken care of. I know you have access to the logistics system. Samantha felt trapped. Expediting the meat's distribution meant ensuring the poison spread even faster. Refusing meant putting Nathan in direct danger. Dread washed over her. She had no choice. She would have to comply, at least for now. Logan and his team intercepted Damien's call. He's forcing her hand, Claire informed Logan, her voice urgent. He knows we're close to something, or he suspects Samantha. He wants her to be the final link to distribute the most critical load. Marcus brought the major breakthrough. Logan, I found the link. Damien isn't a lone wolf. He's working with Borealis Food Group, a front company controlled by Jensen. Remember him? Your old CFO, the one you fired for fraud years ago. Logan felt a jolt of shock. Jensen, a bitter, vengeful man with the intelligence and resources to orchestrate something like this. He's not just after money, he's after revenge. He wants to see Pierce Holdings in ruins, tainted by a public health scandal. Exactly, Marcus agreed. And this tainted meat is the weapon. Preliminary reports from samples collected by Claire's people indicate a slow-acting but lethal toxin. No one would die immediately, but they'd develop serious health problems that would manifest months later, making the connection to Pierce Holdings almost untraceable. It would be a devastating blow to the company's reputation and value. The revelation was overwhelming. Nathan was in immediate danger not just from his illness, but because his sister, the waitress Hussein, who had become an unlikely hero, was in the crosshairs of a complex and murderous revenge scheme. Samantha was more vulnerable than ever. The emotional urgency peaked. Time was running out. They needed irrefutable proof, and they needed it now. We need Damien's office, Claire declared, pointing to a detailed diagram of the Golden Fork. He'll have the records of the fake purchases, the agreements with Borealis, and maybe even the details of the lab supplying the tainted meat. We need direct access to his computers and physical files. Logan looked at her, his decision already made. I'm going with you. Claire frowned. Logan, you're the founder of the company. If you get caught, this will be an even bigger disaster. Besides, this isn't your kind of operation. I have my team. I've been inside, Claire, Logan retorted, his voice firm. I know the layout. I know Damien, his habits. And Samantha, the wee waitress who risked everything. She trusted me. I'm not leaving her to face this alone. I'm Luke, the average guy. That's how we'll get in. He knew it was risky, but his time as an observer was over. He needed to be part of the solution. Claire saw the determination in Logan's eyes and reluctantly nodded. All right, but you follow my orders. No exceptions. And we'll use the cover of a night cleaning crew. It's the most invisible cover. The plan was meticulously crafted. Claire's team had already disabled the Golden Fork's external security systems. The infiltration would take place in the dead of night, when the restaurant would be empty and the internal security systems would be most vulnerable. Logan and Claire would disguise themselves as a contract cleaning crew, complete with generic uniforms, buckets, mops, and discreetly hidden laptops, USB drives, and hacking tools. The tension in the command center was palpable. Logan, for the first time in years, felt an adrenaline rush that money could never buy. Claire reviewed the checklist, her gaze like steel. Marcus was on the line with his contacts at the DA's office, prepping them for what was to come, should the operation succeed. Remember, Logan, Claire instructed, handing him an earpiece communicator. We're looking for digital and physical records. The more, the better. And don't forget your role. You're an exhausted janitor. Nothing more. Logan nodded, his mind focused. He pulled on the janitor's uniform, feeling the rough texture of the fabric, so different from his silk suits. He looked at himself in the mirror. Luke was back, but this time with a much more dangerous mission. Moving under the cover of darkness, Logan, as Luke, and Claire, accompanied by two of Claire's disguised agents, slipped through the service doors of the Golden Fork. The restaurant was silent, the tables impeccably set, the crystal chandeliers reflecting the moonlight that filtered through the large windows. The empty luxury of the place now felt oppressive, a stage for the impending drama. The infiltration sequence was a silent, precise ballet. Claire, with her high-tech gadgets, disabled the motion sensors and internal cameras, clearing the path to Damien's office. Logan watched, absorbing every detail, his strategist's mind admiring the ex-agent's efficiency. They moved through dark corridors, the echo of their steps muffled by their rubber-soled shoes. They reached Damien's office. The door was locked with a complex digital security system. Claire knelt, her fingers dancing over a small keypad, deciphering the security codes. The sound of a soft click echoed in the silent room. The door swung open. Inside, Damien's office was a mix of opulence and disarray. Piled documents, a high-end laptop, papers scattered across the desk. "Logan, you're our lookout. Any suspicious movement, you let me know," Claire commanded, already connecting a forensic copy drive to Damien's computer. The other two agents began scanning physical documents, photographing anything that seemed relevant. Logan, with his mop and bucket, feigned cleaning while his eyes scanned the office, looking for anything that might have been missed. He opened a drawer in Damien's desk. Under a pile of fake contracts and kickback receipts, he found an old, unmarked leather folder. He pulled it out. Inside were photos of Nathan in the hospital, a recent picture, and detailed notes on Samantha's schedule, including her shift for tomorrow. The billionaire felt a chill run down his spine. Damien wasn't just blackmailing her. He was obsessed, monitoring her every move, ready to strike. "Claire, look at this," Logan whispered, showing her the folder. "He's got a dossier on Samantha and her brother. He's closer to her than we thought, and he knows she's working tomorrow." Claire examined the photos and notes, her face hardening. "This means tomorrow he's going to try to use her. He's going to force her into something big. We need to be fast, and we need to protect Samantha immediately." Claire's copy drive beeped. "Done. We have everything from the computer. Now the physical documents." The agents quickly photographed the remaining relevant papers, including a map of Chicago with several Pierce Holdings restaurants circled, indicating the distribution route for the tainted meat, and the list of suppliers, with Borealis Food Group's name highlighted. Logan's gaze fell on the pile of open emails on Damien's computer monitor before Claire shut it down. One in particular caught his eye, from an unknown sender. "Special shipment arriving at the port. Urgent." "The port?" Logan murmured. He wasn't just getting regular deliveries. He's got something much bigger coming in. Claire realized the gravity of the find. Marcus needs to know this. Now. This could be a game changer. The team retreated silently, leaving the office as they had found it. The infiltration had been a success, but the feeling of victory was muted by the overwhelming urgency. Damien was preparing for a major move tomorrow, and Samantha was in the line of fire. Logan felt the weight of responsibility. He had discovered the truth. Now he had to act before it was too late for the brave, Waitress, and her brother. The final confrontation was closing in. The air in Logan's suite was thick with the smell of coffee and the tension of the impending battle. The laptop still displayed charts and documents, and the papers scattered across the coffee table formed a mosaic of corruption. The evidence was overwhelming, meticulously collected and categorized by Claire and Marcus's teams. Marcus, his face serious and his glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, led the briefing. "We have everything." The drives copied from Damien's computer contain emails and detailed spreadsheets about the contamination scheme. Supply agreements with Borealis Food Group, all signed by Jensen. Records of payments to clandestine labs that certified the tainted meat as fit for consumption. Claire projected microscope images onto a large screen. The meat samples collected from other Pierce Holdings restaurants confirmed the presence of the toxin. It's a slow-acting synthetic compound, highly damaging to the kidneys and nervous system. The symptoms are delayed, which makes it perfect for a disguised corporate revenge plot. Logan felt a wave of nausea. The sheer malevolence of Jensen and Damien's plan was sickening. Using food, something so fundamental to life, as a weapon of slow destruction, aiming to undermine a company's reputation and, in the process, harm countless innocent people. It was a boundless perversity. "Damien's folder on Samantha," Logan interjected, his voice a low growl, "and the email about the special shipment at the port." He was preparing to use Samantha to distribute a critical load of tainted meat, possibly the most dangerous of all, and he was blackmailing her with Nathan's health. "Confirmed," Marcus nodded. "The shipment from the port arrived this morning and is being moved to a cold storage warehouse under Damien's control before distribution. Samantha is scheduled to expedite the logistics on her shift tonight, as he demanded. She's the last link in the supply chain." Claire's face was tense. "The police and the FBI are on standby. Marcus has already passed them all the information, but they want to catch Damien in the act, and we need to ensure Samantha's safety, as she's the key to his blackmail." Logan closed his eyes for a second. The Waitress he had underestimated and ultimately trusted was at the center of it all. Her courage had unraveled a deadly conspiracy, and now her life depended on the flawless execution of their plan. The billionaire, who was once indifferent to the fate of his employees, now felt an unbreakable bond with Samantha. He would not let her fall. "So here's the plan," Logan began. taking the lead with an authority that went beyond his fortune. Marcus, you'll coordinate with the authorities. They'll surround the Golden Fork and the cold storage warehouse. Claire, you and your team will be ready to move in at the restaurant, ensuring the safety of Samantha and the customers. I'm going there. Not as Luke, but as Logan Pierce. I'll say I'm there for a last-minute inspection, for a gala dinner. I'm going to confront Damien directly. He underestimated me, and that will be his undoing. Claire hesitated. It's dangerous, Logan. Damien could be impulsive. I'm aware, but he needs to see the face of the man who beat him. And I need to make sure Samantha is safe. She needs to know she's not alone, and that Pierce Holdings does not stand for this. The decision was made. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The Golden Fork was buzzing with the elegance of a gala night. High-profile guests, local celebrities, and influential figures from Chicago society filled the dining room. Damien, impeccably dressed in a tuxedo, moved among the tables, smiling and shaking hands, the picture of sophistication and control. He was in his element, completely oblivious to the net that was about to close around him. Samantha, dressed in her Waitress uniform, worked her section with her usual dignity. But with every customer she served, every plate she carried, she felt her heart in her throat. She had received Damien's orders to expedite the distribution of the tainted meat to the main warehouse, and from there to the restaurants. She knew she had to do it to protect Nathan, but with every minute, the guilt and fear of contributing to this evil consumed her. She had no idea that Logan and his team were already in motion. However, a detail caught her attention. She saw one of the janitors from the night before, the one who looked like Luke, being discreetly positioned in a corner by Claire Donovan, the security expert she didn't know but who seemed to be in charge. A glimmer of hope ignited in her chest. She had been seen. She was not alone. Suddenly, the main door of the Golden Fork swung open, and all eyes turned. Logan Pierce walked in, not as the humble Luke, but as the billionaire. Logan Pierce, in all his authority, dressed in a flawless dark suit, with an air of gravity that silenced the room's buzz. His presence was magnetic, powerful. It was the first time many of the employees had seen him in person. Damien froze. His smile vanished, replaced by a mask of surprise and, quickly, of restrained anger. He composed himself and walked toward Logan, forcing a fake smile. "Mr. Pierce, what an unexpected honor. I thought you were in New York. We weren't informed of your visit." "Indeed, Damien," Logan replied, his voice calm but with an edge of steel that made Damien flinch. "It's a last-minute visit, and a very necessary one." His gaze moved across the room, finding Samantha, who had stopped dead with a tray of champagne glasses. Their eyes met. Logan's look was one of promise and protection. "I'd like to speak with you privately, Damien," Logan continued, his tone commanding. "Of course, sir. In my office?" Damien tried to lead Logan to a more discreet location. "No," Logan retorted, his voice echoing through the now silent room. "Here, in front of everyone. You don't operate in the shadows, Damien. You operate in the light. And now it's time for the light to expose the darkness." The buzz returned, louder and filled with curiosity. The guests began to whisper, sensing something extraordinary was about to happen. Logan turned to the center of the room, where a banquet table was set. He picked up a clean linen napkin from the table. "This is the Golden Fork, Damien, one of Pierce Holdings' most prestigious restaurants, a place where people come to celebrate, to enjoy fine cuisine, a place you turned into a distribution center for poison." The accusation was direct and brutal. Damien's face paled. "Mr. Pierce, I don't know what you're talking about. This is outrageous. Slander." "It's not slander, Damien. It's the truth," Logan continued, pulling a USB drive from his pocket. "This small piece of technology contains irrefutable proof. Records of your collaboration with Jensen and the Borealis Food Group. Emails about the tainted meat, embezzlement, blackmailing of employees." Logan paused, his gaze sweeping the room until it found Samantha again. "And especially, the blackmail of Miss Samantha to be your silent accomplice." Samantha felt tears well up in her eyes, not of fear, but of relief and gratitude. She was no longer alone. Damien, realizing how cornered he was, tried one last masterful stroke of manipulation. "This waitress? She's a liar, Mr. Pierce. She's trying to frame me. She was involved in petty tip skimming herself. I have proof." He tried to turn the situation against Samantha, hurling a false accusation. Logan smiled coldly. "Did you think I would come here without proof of your corruption and your cowardice in using a young woman for your nefarious purposes? Marcus." Now, at that moment, the doors of the Golden Fork burst open. Uniformed police officers and FBI agents streamed in, fanning out across the room, their imposing presence instantly silencing any murmurs. Claire Donovan, in plain clothes, entered right behind them, her eyes locked on Damien. "Damien Hayes, you're under arrest for criminal conspiracy, fraud, blackmail, and endangering public health," an FBI agent declared, reading him his rights. Damien, his eyes now bloodshot with fury and desperation, tried to run, but was immediately intercepted and restrained by the agents. "Samantha, you bitch! You'll regret this! Your brother will pay!" he screamed, trying to strike her with his eyes. Logan stepped in front of Samantha, shielding her. "He won't touch you. Or Nathan." Claire approached Damien, cuffed and furious. "Your shipment from the port has also been intercepted, Damien, and Jensen is already in custody. Game over." The shocked and now horrified audience watched the villain's downfall, their elegant conversations replaced by murmurs of disbelief and shock. The luxury of the Golden Fork now contrasted vividly with the sordidness of the crime that had unfolded within its walls. The next morning, the news of the Golden Fork conspiracy was on the front page of every newspaper. Pierce Holdings, under the leadership of Logan Pierce, quickly issued a detailed statement explaining how the company had discovered the conspiracy internally and collaborated with authorities to dismantle it. Logan didn't hide Samantha's role, praising her courage and integrity. The image of a multi-billionaire key, savior of his own empire, and a hero for justice was cemented. Logan met with Samantha, now safe in a discreet apartment arranged by Claire, with Nathan under the care of a private medical team, closely monitored by Marcus. Nathan, though still frail, was stable, and new therapies were on the way. "Samantha," Logan began, his tone softer than ever before, "I want to thank you. You not only saved my company from an unimaginable catastrophe, you saved countless lives. And more importantly, you taught me something about honesty and courage that I had forgotten." Samantha, still processing everything, felt humbled. "I just did what was right, Mr. Pierce. I'm not a hero. I was scared." "But you acted in spite of your fear," Logan countered. "That's true courage. You were the unicorn I was searching for. For your integrity and for everything you've been through, I want you to know that you and Nathan will be safe and taken care of. Your medical debt will be paid, and Nathan's treatment will be covered by Pierce Holdings, with the best specialists in the country. And that's just the beginning." Logan paused, a slight smile forming on his lips. "I'm restructuring Pierce Holdings. We're creating a new department for ethics and supply chain integrity. A department that will ensure something like this never happens again. And I want you to be a fundamental part of it, Samantha. Not as a waitress, but as the head of that department. You know the systems, you understand the pressure, and you have the integrity we need. Think about it. It's a position of power, of responsibility. You would have a real voice in the company." Samantha was speechless. From a humble, blackmailed, and desperate waitress in Stiosh, she was being offered a position of leadership and influence in one of the world's largest corporations. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope and of a future she never dreamed was possible. She accepted, not just for the power or the salary, but for the chance to truly make a difference, to protect others from going through what she and Nathan had endured. Weeks later, the dust had settled. Damien and Jensen were sentenced to long prison terms, and the name of Pierce Holdings, though scathed, emerged with a new reputation for transparency and accountability. Under Logan's renewed leadership, the company launched rigorous ethics programs, independent audits, and a support fund for employees in vulnerable situations. Logan Pierce stood on his Manhattan penthouse terrace again, the same terrace where it had all begun. But this time, the night breeze didn't bring panic. It brought a sense of peace, of purpose. He was no longer the cynical, detached, and lonely billionaire. The waitress. Samantha had changed everything. He had learned that fortune without purpose is empty, a soulless shell. True value wasn't in the billions in his account, but in the integrity of his actions and the courage to protect the vulnerable. He looked out at the glittering city, no longer with cynicism, but with a new perspective. He had found his unicorn, and with it, a new purpose. Pierce Holdings would not just be an empire of wealth, but an empire of ethics and responsibility. And somewhere in Chicago, Samantha, the former waitress, now a figure of respect and influence, was building a better future for Nathan and for everyone who worked honestly. The story of Logan Pierce and Samantha, the power billionaire and the waitress, was a testament that even in the darkest corners of corporate greed, courage and honesty could and would prevail. The crumpled napkin had been the beginning of everything, not the end. It had been the map to redemption. If you enjoyed this story of courage and redemption, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment about what moved you the most, subscribe to the channel for more gripping content, and share it with your friends. Your support helps us bring more narratives like this to life.